Okay, I'd like to call tonight's meeting in the Lower Macungie Township Board of Commissioners to order. Will we please stand for a pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. For the roll call, everybody who is supposed to be here is here, with our engineer, Brian McAdam, joining us through Zoom. There are no agenda modifications this evening. There are no announcements and presentations, which moves us into item 6, hearings and approvals. 6.1, conditional use hearing. Gregory and Susan Hart for a multifamily dwelling at the property located at 1740 Spring Creek Road. I hereby temporarily adjourn the meeting of the Lower Macungie Township Board of Commissioners for the purpose of conducting a conditional use hearing on the application of Gregory and Susan Hart conversion of the 1740 Spring Creek Road barn into 4 apartments pursuant to section 27-1909 of zoning code. The property is located in the U Urban Residential Zoning District. I would like to note the presence of a court stenographer who shall commence recording a transcript of this hearing. I am now turning over conduct of the hearing to our solicitor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening and welcome to the conditional use hearing of the Lower Macungie Township Board of Commissioners. My name is David Broman. I am the solicitor for the township. The members of the board present tonight are President Higgins, Vice President Ward, and members Maury Robert, Ron Beitler, and Commissioner Schumacher. As I indicated, this is a conditional use hearing. For those not familiar with conditional use is a use permitted by right in the zoning code if the applicant meets all the criteria. If the Board of Commissioners has the right to either vote tonight on the decision on the application, or they can wait till their next meeting. They have 45 days to act and write a written decision. Is anybody here for this application either in favor or against? You're all in favor. Okay. I'll skip the part about party status.
Good.
You will have the opportunity to provide public comment after the applicant's presentation. At this time, I would like to introduce the township exhibits. Township Exhibit 1 is the conditional use application dated July 31, 2023. Exhibit 2 is Nathan Jones, AICP Director of Community Development and Planning Review Memorandum dated October 5, 2023. Township 3 is the Planning Commission recommendation dated October 27, 2023. Exhibit 4 is the legal notice in the East Penn Press on November 1 and November 8, 2023. Exhibit 5 is the certification of property posting by Robert Schwartz and Vince Tranguch dated November 1, 2023. And lastly, Exhibit 6 is the certification of mailing by Maureen Lang and Nate Jones dated November 3, 2023. I see the applicant's attorney, Blake Morris, has already taken the podium, and I presume your witnesses are at the table, so I'll turn it over to you and let you take over.
Thank you, Mr. Bruman. Should we have the witness sworn? I think we'll probably have a single witness tonight. We can move through this quickly.
Okay.
Don't forget to speak into the mic, especially for people.
Yeah, it's very sensitive.
All right.
Yeah. You two will need to talk into the mic.
Just
These
pull
are,
I do.
Yeah, pull it.
thank you.
closer.
They're
Pull it closer to you because it doesn't pick up very easily.
Thanks.
Members of the board, by way of introduction, Blake Marles on behalf of Stevens and Lee. And I'm not only the attorney in this matter, but I'm also a neighbor. And I want to give you just a little bit of background, which isn't necessary for the hearing, but might be useful in context. When the Lehigh Manor Senior Facility was put in here now many years ago. One of the requests of the township was that the farmhouse and farmstead be preserved on the corner at Spring Creek and Mill Creek Road. Mr. Hart at the time, or at some subsequent time, was involved in facilities maintenance and control there. And the property owner decided they wanted to tear it down. I think that was not known to the township. Mr. Hart said, well, rather than tear it down, I'll buy it. And in the interim period, I can tell you that to say that the house was in disrepair would be understating it. They had an orangutan living in it, literally. And the rooms where the orangutan lived were just torn to shreds. They locked the orangutan in during the day, and the neighbors found out about the orangutan because one day they had it chained to the basketball pole that was outside. And people would just stop and say, did we just see an orangutan at that house? So in any event, this place was in pretty bad shape when Greg took it over. It's one of a series of farmhouses that start at Sauerkraut and Willow and proceed along Mill Creek Road past what is the site of what was the Schmoyer's Mill. Greg's house is the oldest of the barns and of the farmhouses, and it goes back into the 1700s. All the rest are in the 1800s. And if you've driven by recently, you'll see that he's pointed the house. And by taking the plaster off and pointing it, he discovered it was one of the few houses in the township that wasn't rubble stone. It's actually cut stone, rubble, R-U-B-B-L-E. It's cut stone, and I think they've done a beautiful job. So this application is part of the preservation of this farmstead as a homestead facility. So with that background, I'd like to point out first Exhibits 1 and Exhibit 2. We'll start with Exhibit 1, which is simply a portion of the zoning ordinance. Just to put this in context, you have a provision in the zoning ordinance that relates to historic preservation and historic structure protection. And within that, it encourages the adaptive reuse of existing barns and says that a barn shall qualify for a conditional use in any zoning district at any time for the following uses, one of which is multifamily dwelling not to exceed 4 units. If one proceeds then down to C, the following apply to adaptive reuse. One is to meet parking requirements, certainly. The second is to meet the township parking regulations. The third is to deal with screening and planting, and the fourth is to deal with hours of operation. Exhibit 2, and then I'll stop talking and let the witnesses talk, is another provision of the ordinance relating to open space development, which is section 272416. And in this section, it similarly talks about preserving barns in subsection 3D, which is captioned preservation of historic dwellings and structures. To encourage the preservation of historic dwellings, such as preserved dwellings, shall not count toward the maximum number of dwelling units, provided that a certain number of criteria are met, and those criteria are also met. So it's under those provisions that we come before you tonight. The request in the application is for 4 units. Mr. Hart will testify that he wants only 1 additional unit. It was at our request that he requested 4 units because right now the zoning ordinance permits that. There's no current desire to do anything more than 1 unit. And certainly there's an understanding that whatever the criteria are at the time to put more units in, he'd have to do, but it made sense to get the approvals that were available at the time. So with that background, I'd like to introduce Mr. Hart. Greg, could you please state your name for the record?
My name is Gregory Hart.
And did you and your wife Susan acquire the property in 2002?
Yes, we did, July 29th, 2002.
From whom did you acquire it?
From the establishment, the nursing home, the assisted living, Lehigh Limited Group.
All right, which changed names from time to time, but
Yeah,
it was the
Genesis
entity that built it.
Healthcare, now it's something else.
All right, I'd like to draw your attention to exhibit number 3. and ask you if this is a plot plan of the portion of the parcel that you acquired from Lehigh Manor.
Yes,
And is the building on the Spring Creek Road side of the property, the barn, which is the subject of this application?
correct.
And is your home, the building that's marked existing masonry house adjacent to Spring Creek Road?
Yes,
Did you have to take responsibility for the detention pond for Lehigh Manor and maintenance of the detention pond as part of your responsibility when you acquired the property?
yes, partially. The outskirt, they're responsible for the fence.
Okay, they're responsible for fencing, you're responsible for maintenance?
Yeah.
Okay. And approximately how close is your house to Spring Creek Road?
20 feet,
All right.
15, 20 feet.
And is the Spring Creek Road face the only way to get into the basement? Is there actually an entrance to your home from that side of the house?
There is a door on the Spring Creek side that accesses the basement. That's the only access. And then also to the basement. And then there's also the front door, which is the main story.
Right, you can reach the basement from the interior, but the only exterior exit is the Spring Creek side,
Correct.
right? Okay,
Greg, can you just pull that microphone closer? We really can't hear you and
Oh,
it
right.
won't record. Yeah, thank you.
all right. Now, if you were to look at the barn on this sketch, it's an L-shaped structure. And I'd like to direct your attention to the L, which extends along the Spring Creek Road frontage. Was that the subject of a zoning application in 2005 for an in-law apartment?
No.
Oh,
Well, no, I'm sorry, say that again.
yes. Was that wing of the barn the subject of a zoning application in
Yes,
2005?
yes.
All right. And were you granted approval for your in-laws to live there and you renovated that into a house? Basically?
Yes, in 2005,
And your in-laws are currently deceased?
correct.
All right, and the desire, what prompted this application is your daughter and her family wants to move in there, correct?
Correct.
And in order to do that, your daughter's in-law, your daughter's father-in-law needs a place to live.
Correct.
And that's the reason for wanting to put another apartment in at this time.
Correct.
All right, let's move if we can to exhibit number 4. Is this the south face of the barn?
Yes,
And this faces Spring Creek Road, correct?
correct.
Correct, it actually almost faces the Spring Creek, Mill Creek intersection. All right, will anything change on this side of the barn in terms of what you're proposing?
No,
I'd like to direct your attention to exhibit 5. Is this the easterly, I'm sorry, I'm going to do that wrong. Is this the is this the northerly side of the main barn?
yes, it is.
And does this show the extension of the barn, which is currently the in-law apartment where your daughter's family wants to live?
Yes,
And that porch is associated with that unit, correct?
correct.
Now, there are 2 red boxes around 2 bric-a-brac locations in the masonry part of the barn, which were breather holes for hay. What do you intend to do in those red boxes?
Install some windows.
Will that be the only change in the physical appearance of the barn from the outside? On this space?
From this picture exhibit, yes.
All right, let's move please to exhibit number 6. Now, this is the easterly side of the barn, and again, there are 2 red boxes. This is not a portion of the barn where you intend to do anything currently, correct?
Correct.
But if you were to put more units, or if someone in the future were to put more units into this barn, the layout of the barn would call for those 2 hay breather locations to also become windows, correct? Hay breather.
Correct.
Areas that allow air into the hay so it doesn't mold. But that's not proposed currently, correct?
Correct.
And also on exhibit 6, it indicates that there's a parking space along Spring Creek Road and also a garage that's associated with that unit, correct?
Correct.
Let's move to exhibit 7. Now, this is the end of the barn where you intend to put a unit for your daughter's father-in-law, correct?
Correct.
And could you describe what will happen on that end?
We want to, where the vent is in the center, where the red block is, we want to do a door with a small deck with stairs down to the ground floor.
And for the most part, this won't be visible to the public because this faces your house. It doesn't face Spring Creek or Mill Creek.
Correct. You won't see it.
So this will be the most extensive exterior change to the barn.
That is correct.
So other than poking holes for windows and a door, the physical appearance of the exterior of the barn will not change. Is that a fair statement?
That is a fair statement.
Let's move please to Exhibit 8. This is a depiction, is it not, of the barn and the in-law suite with where the proposed apartment locations would be, correct?
Correct.
And the only one you're intending to build at this time is the one to the left, which is labeled as apartment 1.
Correct.
And finally, could we go to Exhibit 9? In terms of showing current parking locations, everything in red would be a current parking space, correct?
Correct.
So there are 5 shown, and that doesn't include the garage. So there are actually 6 parking spaces current. Correct?
Correct.
In your view, you would not need an additional parking space in order to do this renovation
To do the one
for
apartment.
a single additional unit.
Correct.
And you understand that in the event that additional units were to be put in, you'll have to meet the parking requirements of the ordinance at the time.
I understand.
All right. One other thing that was part of the discussion at the Planning Commission level and was part of Mr. Jones' memorandum, which we'll address in a minute, was frontage improvements, either a trail or a sidewalk. And the recommendation of the Planning Commission is to defer it. But I'd like to talk for just a moment about what should happen from your standpoint in the event in the future you were asked to put in the walkways. Currently, the only way a sidewalk would tie in on Spring Creek Road would be to go along the frontage from the Mill Creek intersection up toward Brookside Road, correct? I'm
Right.
sorry, Lower McCounty.
Right.
And should development occur at the current proposed apartment complex that's contemplated for Lower McCounty Road and Spring Creek Road, presumably that would go along the westerly side of Spring Creek Road.
Right.
All right. So if that sidewalk were to, and there's currently sidewalk on the left side, is there not?
Yes, there
On
is.
the,
You can
which
see
would
it
be
in
the
the,
east
in the
side of
exhibit.
Spring Creek Road. And you can see on this sketch where the sidewalk currently ends. So if sidewalk were to be put on your property, apart from being very close to the barn, it would make sense perhaps to only extend as far as Mill Creek and Spring Creek because there's a stop intersection for pedestrians to cross. Is that a fair
That is
statement?
correct.
All right. If the sidewalk were to extend from Spring Creek and Mill Creek in a westerly direction along Spring Creek Road adjacent to your house, there would, first of all, it would take away any privacy you have for the entrance of your basement, correct?
That is correct.
And there is a trail system on the south side of Spring Creek Road on township land. It just doesn't extend over to your property yet.
Correct.
So if at some point there was connectivity, it would make sense to connect on the south side of Spring Creek Road to whatever is constructed on your property. Is that
It would make
in
sense.
your view?
In my view, yes.
All right, let's proceed if we can then through the comments of the Planning Commission. Referring, if we can, to the Planning Commission's memorandum of October 27. The first proposed condition is that the applicant shall address all comments in the recent Township Planning Department and Zoning Officer review letter to the written satisfaction of each. I think we've established through township exhibits, there currently isn't a zoning letter, but there is a a planning letter of October 5, correct?
Blake, just for the record, we're on Township Exhibit.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, why don't we walk then to Township Exhibit 3, which is with Mr. Jones' note of October 5. First, consideration suggested by him is that street trees should be considered along the frontage of the property. The second is, and we'll go through them all and then go back through them. The second is trails for connectivity should be considered. The third is adequate parking for the number of proposed units must be demonstrated. The fourth is the planning commission should inquire if units would ever be rented to members of the general public and not family members. And number 5, adequate sanitary sewer for the number of units to be demonstrated. Working backwards, have you made application for sewer approval for the additional unit you want?
Yes, I have.
And that's pending. Correct. And that's pending, correct?
Yes, that's pending.
All right, and if family members ever moved out, presumably you would want to be able to use these units for rental purposes because they're physically there and available and would help
Correct.
support the farmstead. And we've talked about parking. In your view, adequate parking is currently available, not only for what's there, but for what is proposed. And you acknowledge you have an obligation to meet parking requirements should additional units ever go in.
Absolutely.
Roadway frontage improvements, we've talked about a trail and what your suggestion is, should that ever happen. But you're asking for a deferral of trails at this time because there's nothing to connect to, correct?
Correct.
And fourth is landscaping, and we'll come back to that because the Planning Commission addressed landscaping in its memorandum. Turning to the comments of the proposed recommendations of the Planning Commission of October 27. First is to address the comments that we've just discussed. The second is the applicant shall construct the apartments in strict conformity with the recommended plan and additional modifications noted in the recommendations. And you have every intention of doing that, correct?
Yes.
We've talked about trails. Then the Township Planning Commission in condition number 3 recommends a deferral at this time, correct?
Correct.
Number 5, the Planning Commission is not recommending adding street trees at this location. They're suggesting this existing trees be preserved unless they're sick, damaged, or dying, correct?
Correct.
Unless they're sick, damaged, or dying. And in fact, there are not street trees, but you've added trees since you moved into the property.
Yes, we have.
Number 5 is the barn shall continue to be maintained or improved with attention to its historic and aesthetic integrity. And in your view, have you done that with what's proposed here tonight?
Yes.
Number 6 talks about adequate parking, which we've discussed. Number 7 says the applicant shall submit a written proposal to the Township Community Development Department for an addressing system for the new apartment units and provide written proof of approval by the post office. You agree to do that, correct?
Yeah.
And it's our understanding that the township actually determines what is submitted to the post office for addresses. And we would suggest that it would be 1740 Spring Creek Road, A, B, C, D. Probably the most convenient way of addressing it. Number 8, the applicant shall apply for sewer capacity, sanitary sewer capacity, and you have. Number 9, all on-site landscaping shall be maintained and replaced as needed, and you're willing to do that?
Yes.
All new. Number 10, all new lighting will be installed, and any existing lighting that will be replaced as part of the project should be historically and architecturally accurate to the existing barn. I don't know how we do that because the barn would not have had lighting since it's from the 1820s. But in terms of maintaining the kinds of lighting you have now, that's something you are willing to do, correct?
Yes.
And if you add lighting for safety, it will be dark sky compliant, correct?
Yes.
Number 11, the applicant shall connect to public water and sewer. You are connected to public water and sewer for both the house and the barn currently, correct?
Yes.
All right, and any fees connected to public and water and sewer shall be paid by the applicant on a per unit basis is what was proposed, and you're willing to do that.
Yes.
And finally, the applicant represents that they plan for only family members if they choose to begin renting, that the community development department will be notified to assure that there's adequate parking. That's your understanding of what you're willing to do, correct?
Yes,
And finally, the planning commission recommends the payment of recreation fees on a per unit basis as they're built, and you understand that the current recreation fee is $3,800 for the unit that you're proposing at this
per
moment.
unit, yes.
And the planning commission recommends 2 deferrals. And with that, I think we're done with our presentation.
All right, why don't we start with commissioner questions to my immediate left? Commissioner
Commissioner
Schumacher?
I have no questions at this time.
Commissioner Robert?
Yeah, okay, you're applying for 4 units, but you're only gonna build 1.
Yes, sir.
And, okay, so if you got up to 4 dwelling units, then that would be a full-blown multifamily dwelling unit, which has various requirements, sprinklers, and the township probably wouldn't pick up the trash and things like that. So I'm having a little trouble with you're asking for 4, but you're only building 1, and how we deal with if you add others later.
If I can help, Mr. Robert, I think the first question is if they add more units and it becomes a multifamily structure for building code purposes, they have to meet the building code requirements for that use at the time. This is only a zoning approval. It's not a building code approval. They have to go through that process. And we recognize that the building code requirements for more units than the 3 that are being proposed may be different than they would be for a unit that's segregated as this one currently is. As to trash, that's going to be a function of what your trash contract is at the time, I would presume. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that once you get to 3 dwellings on one property, you need to have private garbage service. So this one apartment would make 3 dwellings on one property. 3 dwellings on one property with your house, the in-law suite, and the apartment. So one of the things that would have to be done is you'd have to contract out for private garbage. So Nate, let me run this down, what Commissioner Roberts talking about. So even if we approve the zoning on 4 apartments, there still is I'm assuming a development phase of this where the codes have to be met, building codes have to be met depending on what's put in it. So when you get to sprinklers and things along those lines, based on the number of dwelling units that are currently or being used or being built.
Correct. What would happen is a building permit application would be submitted to our office. The building code official would look through it along with myself, and we would recognize that the trigger is tripped, and whatever the building code is at the time, whether it's fire separation, sprinklers, whatever's required of the code at that time, would then be required to be able to get a building permit. The zoning review would also be done. And that zoning review would also make sure that there's adequate parking for each one number of the units that's going in. And for economy of scale purposes, I would imagine that they would add multiple spaces all at once whenever that time comes and is necessary for the space, for the extra units beyond the one that they intend to build now.
I would
have
suggest
no-
that most of the conditions are in here. The one condition that's not in here is just assurance that they'll comply with the Boca code if they trip to commercial.
There's certainly no objection to that. I think they have that obligation.
And we're looking into trash, whether it's already been tripped or whether it'll be tripped with the new apartment. Don't know.
Don't know.
Here's my question for you, okay? Because I've been in situations where we've got all these agreements and then the property sells and a new owner claims, I didn't know about that. So I want to record the conditions. You have a problem with that?
I have no question, no problem with that at all. I think it's a good idea.
Thanks.
One other question I have is, units 2 and 3, I didn't see any windows.
We're not planning on doing that at this time.
Yeah,
I have no intentions of apartment 2, 3, or 4 in my lifetime.
Okay.
I'll let the next person worry about that.
Again, they're gonna have to meet building code requirements. There have to be light and access and probably second means of ingress and egress, so. Probably a second means of ingress and egress should those units go in, but again, that's a BOCA issue, I think.
So I would like to request that, that one additional condition associated, meeting the terms of BOCA and fire codes and so forth included.
Yeah, I think that's appropriate.
No other question.
No other
Commissioner
questions?
Ward,
Good, thank you.
Commissioner Byler,
Good.
Nate or Brian, any questions?
No, I've covered everything as far as procedurals, so.
No, we were not involved in this application. No questions.
This would be the time for public comment. If anyone would like to come up to the podium and say a few words, you're not required to, but I just want to give you the opportunity for public comment.
Uh-oh.
I live in the Rolling Meadows. Eric Heiklin, I'm sorry. Heiklin, Heicklen.
Where do you live, Eric?
I actually live,
Sorry.
do I need to?
Yeah.
CKLEN. I do. I live, my address is 6091 Timberknoll Drive. 6091 Timberknoll. The back of my house actually looks right across at the barn. I moved here February of 2002. Mr. Hart and his family moved in soon after to the barn. At that point in time, the place was not in very good repair. Ever since then, it's almost a pleasure to look out the back window now at the barn and the house and everything that he's done to the property. And we have no problem with, first of all, he's bringing in all family. Of course, we do know them all, but which helps, but it's with all the work that's been done to the property and the barn, it's only an asset and only an asset to, I'd say, the community as a whole, because everybody notices that house when they go by. If I talk to people and say, oh yeah, our house looks at the barn. Oh yeah, the one right Spring Creek and Mill Creek. Yeah. So we have no problem with this whatsoever. And I don't think any of the neighbors do from all the ones that we talked to. So I actually think it's a good idea to bring family in because it's all family. So,
Thank you.
Mr. President, this concludes the conditional use hearing, except for the obligation of the Board of Commissioners to discuss, deliberate, and decide whether to approve the conditional use application presently before the board.
Do I have a motion to authorize the solicitor to prepare a written decision approving the conditional use application of Gregory and Susan Hart and thereby authorize the conversion of the barn at 1740 Spring Creek Road into 4 apartments for family members, subject to the conditions set forth in the Planning Commission recommendation dated October 27th, 2023.
As amended,
And
as amended.
no, just let me finish what I'm saying, and then you can
Okay.
jump in because we're covering that. And any other conditions discussed on the record at this hearing.
Okay.
Now you can go.
Move to approve.
Okay. We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Are there any commissioner comments or questions? Any public comments or questions? Seeing and hearing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, at this time, the conditional use hearing is adjourned and the regular meeting of the Board of Commissioners is reconvened. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving forward, item number 7, public comment on non-agenda topics. Seeing none, I'll move on to communication. Mr. Beidle.
Thank you. I have several this evening. Sanford Ames from Astound RCN, a notice of service and programming changes to cable subscribers. Julie McDonald, a statement of interest to remain on the vacancy board. John Parrish, a statement of interest for the zoning hearing board and the public safety advisory committee. David Weider, statement of interest to remain on the building code board of appeals. And Ron Carlson from Waste Management, providing the township notice that they will not be extending or executing their option to extend the township solid waste agreement that it expires in August of 2024.
So Bruce, we were expecting that letter at some time between now and March. How soon can we go out to bid on a new contract?
We are preparing the specifications with legal, so we anticipate in the next maybe 2 months to have that ready to go, to give us enough time for the transition.
Yeah, I think it's important that we get it done as soon as we can, just because we know, and we've said multiple times here in public, that the cost of trash is going to go up tremendously with our next contract, as it has in other communities already around the valley, really without any control on our end, other than to get the best deal we can. But the sooner we get it done, the more time we have to make sure everybody understands that it's going to be more expensive in the fourth quarter next year than it is the first 3 quarters with a new contract.
Correct. And we wanted to make sure as soon as we got this notice, we brought it in front of the board and as well, so the residents are starting to become aware, and we're working as part of our informational campaign to establish our website, provide some additional mailers of the significant impacts that we believe are coming with solid waste in the end of next year.
Item 9.
Mr. President, I can tell you that Township Manager commissioned us this week to get this together. I don't see any reason why we can't have a bid out in January if that's the desire.
Excellent. Okay, item 9, there are no appointments to various boards, committees, and commissions. Item 10, approval of minutes of the previous meeting, November 2nd, 2023.
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any commissioner comments or questions? Any public comments or questions? Seeing and hearing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item 11, approval of transfers, bill list, and payroll. Mr. Beidle.
Thank you. I have the following for your consideration this evening. The general fund, $1,372,907.45. The sewer fund, $59,053.31. The capital projects fund, $96,668.32. The liquid fuels fund, $525. The payroll, $165,318.35. Developer escrow, $50,169.21, for a total of all funds, $1,744,641.64.
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any commissioner comments or questions on the bill list? Any public comments or questions on the bill list? Seeing and hearing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And as always, a reminder to the community that our bill list is available for your review on our website. Item 12, departmental matters and reports. 12.1, engineering. Mr. McAdam.
I have nothing to report tonight, Mr. President.
Thank you. Any questions for the engineer? Item 12.2, planning. 12.2.1, resolution 2023-54, security release for Schaefer Run Commons, Hamilton Walk. Mr. Jones.
Yes, a security release for public improvements that have been bonded as part of the Schaefer Run Commons Hamilton Walk project. We'll be releasing $240,516. $1,060,804 will remain in the letter of credit for further inspections.
Move to approve.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve resolution 2023-54. Are there any commissioner comments or questions? Any public comments or questions? Seeing and hearing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, anything else, Mr. Jones?
That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, solicitor, 12.3.1, resolution 2023-55. Conservation easement and declaration of restrictive covenants with Brookside Country Club and Macungie Borough associated with the fields at Brookside Land Development. Solicitor Bruman.
We talked about this at workshop, briefly. This is the outcome, frankly, of the Fields of Brookside development. The township became somewhat of the beneficiary of a conservation easement over the golf course. It took quite a while to negotiate that between the borough, myself, and the golf club. But we do now have a very legitimate conservation easement, which will keep the golf course as recreational open space, i.e. a golf course, or open space to never be developed. That'll get recorded and it'll be binding on successors and assignments. So that's what's in front of you tonight.
Question.
Yes.
I noticed that all of the meets and bounds for the conservation area were at the 100-year floodplain. And so the land that's in the 100-year floodplain will just remain outside of the conservation easement, but still owned by the golf course. Is that correct?
I'm not sure I understand the question. It's 90 acres. I frankly didn't look at the survey or the legal. I'm happy to do that.
Well,
but-
no, in each of the meets and bounds, it says at the 100-year floodplain.
Okay,
And then there's a plot plan that shows the 90 acres, and then there's some crosshatch that is just floodplain, and just confirming that I was reading that correctly, that will just remain in the ownership of the golf course, and they can't develop it because it's in the 100-year floodplain.
is any part of that in the borough?
Huh?
Is any part of the land you're describing, meaning the fringe, in the borough?
No.
Then they can't without a variance.
Okay, so, yeah, it would, I would just have thought they would put the whole thing in the conservation easement, but, okay, I make a motion that we approve.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any commissioner comments or questions? Any public comments or questions? Seeing and hearing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, any other questions for the solicitor?
All I will say is from here, it'll be signed by the borough and the golf course and then get recorded.
Very good, thank you. 12.4, Township Manager, Mr. Beidle.
Thank you, Commissioners. You have before you this evening the first draft of the 2024 budget ordinance. I would note, well, I would thank the staff and the board for all of your feedback in this budget process. This document is the result of numerous meetings as well as months of work by staff and the board. The general fund, $12,708,130 revenue expenditures. The solid waste fund, $4,784,000 revenue and expenditures. The sewer fund, $5,407,600 revenue and expenditure. The debt service fund, $2,114,200 revenue and expenditures. The capital projects fund, $3,287,255 revenue and expenditures. The open space fund, $2,285,200 revenue and expenditures. The open space maintenance fund, $500,000. revenue and expenditures. The State Liquid Fuels Fund, $1,177,150, revenue and expenditures. I would note for the public, as well as the board, the property tax rate of 0.50 mils stands as it currently is, without an increase. There also is the 0.25 mil library referendum approved library tax as well, that has not increased. Earned income tax rates stay the same, real estate transfer the same, the local service tax at $52, and as we mentioned, the most important part, the property taxes have remained the same. We do, and would note to the public, we previously talked about earlier with the potential trash bill increase in the last 4 months of the year. This budget as presented does use the current rates, as that current contract does not expire until August 31st of 2024. If rates were to go up upon proposals received, the board would need to consider raising the solid waste fees at that time to ensure that we are able to cover the new contract and whatever those costs may be. The sewer fund proposal relies on an increase of a sewer increase of approximately $4 per quarter for the average customer. We work to try to keep all of the rates down. We never want to increase a rate, but this minimal amount is required at this point for our ongoing state mandated requirement projects, as well as the future projects at the authority that we'll see on Monday night in their review. So unless there's any questions, we're comfortable and confident in the budget that we've brought forth for you. This will be posted for the general public for their view, both online on our website already, as well as in the township per standards. We would look for an adoption in December so that we meet our time frame of the end of the year.
Is there any formal action we need to take to acknowledge the first reading?
No, not at this time.
Okay, are there any questions for the township manager? Okay, seeing, hearing none, I'll move forward.
Hold on, if I could, please.
Oh,
I'm sorry, I have a list
I
now,
thought
if
you were
if
done.
we're
I
able.
apologize.
No, I just
Anything further, Mr. Vital.
just wanted to advise the residents and remind them of the craft show this week at the community center. That's Saturday, November 8th from 9 to 3. That's one of our big recreational events. The Christmas tree lighting Friday, December 1st, 6 to 8, community center this year on this campus. So in our fire department partnership with that event, and that we are currently seeking donations for our troop support program until November 22nd. The pajama program until December 29th. Always looking for township based troops or recommendations for that troop support program for those items that we receive in donation. I believe we have 3 at this point, so we're always looking for more. And then just a reminder as well that volunteers are needed for various boards and commissions. Our application deadline is December 11th. We also have the workshop meeting on November 27th. The agenda for that meeting is fairly lengthy at this time. We would anticipate several hours of reviewing various projects and seeing presentations. So unless there's any questions for me, that's all I have.
Okay, any other questions for the township manager? Then moving forward, item 13, other business. Is there any old business this evening? Is there any new business this evening? Okay, Board of Commissioner reports. The next board workshop is November 27th, 2023 at 6 p.m. The next regular board meeting is scheduled for December 7th, 2023 at 6 p.m. With that, I'll wish everyone watching and here a happy Thanksgiving. And with that, we are adjourned.
Have a great Thanksgiving, everyone.
You too,
You as
Brian.
well, Brian.